Ever stop to think about what's actually happening in your head right now? I mean, you're not just a machine processing information. You're having an experience. There's a whole inner movie playing out. And that subjective reality, well, that's what we call consciousness. And figuring out how a 3-pound lump of brain tissue creates all of that, it's genuinely one of the biggest challenges in all of science. So, let's start digging.
So where do we even begin with a mystery this huge? Well, we have to start with the one and only piece of evidence that every single one of us has direct access to: our own awareness. It's so basic to who we are, we almost never stop to actually question it.
Now, really, just take a second. You're hearing my voice, you're looking at the screen, maybe you're thinking about what to have for dinner later, or you can feel the pressure of the chair you're sitting on. All of that stuff, the sounds, the sights, the random thoughts, that is your conscious experience. It's your personal, private show.
And that's the thing that neuroscientists and philosophers are really trying to get at. It's not just about how the brain crunches data. The real question is how and why it feels like something to be you. This subjective quality, this what it's likeness, has a technical name, phenomenal consciousness. And that's the central mystery we're investigating.
Okay, so if consciousness is our big mystery, then the human brain, well, that's our crime scene. And like any good detective, the first thing we've got to do is map out the territory and identify the key hotspots. So, let's look at the evidence.
And to really get a sense of the scale we're dealing with, just wrap your head around this number: 86 billion. That's roughly how many neurons are packed into your brain. Each one is a tiny little processor, and together they form trillions of connections. It's from this ridiculously complex, buzzing network of signals that your entire reality is built.
Now, in our investigation, we've found a few key hotspots. Way down at the base, you've got the brainstem. Think of that as the main power switch. It's what flips you from being awake and alert to being asleep, or in extreme cases, in a coma. Then, right in the middle, you have the thalamus. This is like a grand central station for information, directing all the sensory traffic to the right places. And finally, there's the big one, the cerebral cortex, that wrinkly outer layer. That's the movie studio, where the rich content of your experience gets produced.
So here's the crucial takeaway. There's no single consciousness spot in your brain. You can't point to one little area and say, aha, there it is. It doesn't work that way. Instead, it seems to be an emergent property. It's something that arises from the constant, coordinated chatter between all these different regions. It's the network itself that creates the magic.
All right, so we've mapped the area. Now it's time to meet the prime suspects. In neuroscience, there are two leading theories, two completely different stories trying to explain how all that brain activity actually becomes a subjective experience. In one corner, you've got the global neuronal workspace theory, or GNWT. The idea here is that a piece of information becomes conscious when a big spotlight of attention shines on it and broadcasts it across a brain-wide network, making it available to the whole system. In the other corner is integrated information theory, or IIT. IIT says consciousness isn't about broadcasting at all. It's a fundamental property of how interconnected a system is. The more integrated the information, the more conscious the system. It's less of a spotlight and more about the deep underlying structure of the network itself. So, how in the world do you decide between two powerful theories like that? Well, in a really cool, groundbreaking approach, scientists are actually pitting them against each other head-to-head. In what's called an adversarial collaboration, the main champions of both theories got together and designed experiments that could potentially prove one or even both of them wrong. This is just science at its absolute best, trying to get to the truth no matter what.
Okay, so we're looking at the how, but what about the why? I mean, if this incredibly complex system of consciousness exists, there must have been an evolutionary reason for it. What was the motive? Why did nature bother creating subjective experience in the first place?
The best guess is that consciousness is the ultimate problem-solving tool. It's what allows an animal to go beyond just pure instinct. It lets you pull together information from all over, what you're seeing, what you remember, how you're feeling, and then plan a totally new course of action. In a dangerous, unpredictable world, the creature that can think its way out of a new problem, instead of just relying on reflexes, is the one that's going to survive. That is a huge survival advantage.
And this evolutionary story goes back, way back. Some theories suggest the very first glimmers of consciousness might have sparked to life more than 500 million years ago during the Cambrian explosion, a massive evolutionary arms race. Millions of years later, with the rise of mammals, the complex brain systems we're talking about became much more common. And then, finally, in our own species, the system leveled up to support things like complex language and self-awareness.
For a very long time, we humans have been, well, kind of arrogant about consciousness, thinking it was our own private club. But what if our investigation has been too narrow? What if there are other witnesses out there with very different kinds of minds who could blow this case wide open?
This idea really hit the mainstream in 2012 with something called the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness. It was a landmark moment. A group of top-tier neuroscientists basically came out and said, look, the evidence is pretty overwhelming. The basic brain structures that support consciousness are not unique to humans. You don't need our kind of brain to have an inner life. And that just opened the floodgates.
And the list of potential candidates is just amazing. The evidence strongly suggests that all mammals and all birds are probably conscious. But it doesn't stop there. You have cephalopods, like octopuses, with their completely alien nervous systems who show incredible signs of awareness. Some research is even pointing to forms of consciousness in insects. The picture that's starting to emerge is that consciousness isn't a fluke. It's a tool that nature has evolved over and over again.
Which leaves us with a final, really big question to think about. If consciousness isn't some luxury add-on that only we have, but an intrinsic, fundamental property that evolved in all sorts of creatures, what does that change? It changes our whole understanding of biology, for sure. But it also changes our ethical responsibilities to the millions of other minds that share this planet with us. It forces you to wonder what it's really like to be a bat or an octopus or even a bee, and to realize that we're just one conscious species out of many.